The joke slipped out of his mouth the way exhausted people sometimes let truth disguise itself as humor, and in that exact second the air seemed to thicken around Ethan Carter as if fate itself had leaned forward to listen, because a single father who had spent years surviving on cold coffee, sleepless nights, and unspoken grief had just cracked open the door to a life he never believed would answer back. Before the story pulls you deeper into Ethan's world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that hope can find anyone, anywhere, at the most ordinary moment. Ethan was not the kind of man people noticed at parties or remembered long after meetings ended, not because he lacked warmth, but because life had taught him to fold himself smaller, to take up as little space as possible after losing his wife Lily to a sudden illness 6 years earlier, the kind that arrives without warning and leaves a silence so loud it rewires your entire existence, and since that day he had lived for one purpose only, raising his daughter Sophie with a devotion so fierce it bordered on quiet desperation. His mornings began before dawn, packing lunches, braiding hair with clumsy patience, and rehearsing smiles in the mirror so Sophie would never see the cracks underneath, and his nights ended with spreadsheets spread across the kitchen table, calculating how far his paycheck could stretch before something snapped, because being a single dad meant living with constant arithmetic, measuring love against time, money against guilt, exhaustion against responsibility. At work Ethan was dependable to a fault, the kind of employee who arrived early, left late, and never complained, and his boss, Claire Whitmore, noticed everything even when she pretended not to, a woman known for her sharp instincts, polished authority, and a calm presence that could silence a room, yet behind her professional exterior lived a loneliness of her own shaped by years of choosing ambition over connection after a painful divorce that taught her how fragile trust could be. On Ethan's birthday the office gathered in the break room with a small cake that leaned slightly to one side, the frosting imperfect and store-bought, and as coworkers laughed and teased, he felt that familiar tug in his chest where celebration brushed too closely against memory, reminding him of birthdays when Lily had filled their tiny apartment with music and laughter, when life felt like something promised rather than borrowed. It was in that fragile emotional space, surrounded by people yet profoundly alone, that Ethan made the offhand comment that would change everything, tossing out a tired joke about marrying for stability, about needing a miracle wrapped in humor so it wouldn't hurt to say out loud. And when Claire looked at him, really looked at him, something shifted between them, something unspoken but heavy with meaning. Claire had spent years training herself to read between the lines, and what she saw in Ethan wasn't a punchline but a man carrying a world on his shoulders, a father who had sacrificed youth, dreams, and rest without ever asking for applause, and in that moment she recognized a reflection of her own quiet ache, the cost of choosing survival over vulnerability. The rest of the day passed in a blur for Ethan. Deadlines met, emails sent, his heart racing for reasons he couldn't name, while Claire watched him from her office window, remembering how loneliness doesn't always announce itself with tears, sometimes it hides behind responsibility and jokes told too casually. That evening Ethan returned to his small apartment, helped Sophie with homework, listened to her talk about school with the kind of attention that made her feel like the most important person in the universe, and tucked her into bed with a kiss on the forehead that lingered a second longer than usual, because something about the day had unsettled him, stirred a sense that life was shifting under his feet. Claire spent the same evening alone in her quiet home, the walls echoing with the absence of voices, reflecting on a career built meticulously, on successes celebrated alone, on birthdays forgotten because no one remained close enough to remember, and she realized that for the first time in years, the thought of opening her door to someone did not feel like a threat. When the night finally unfolded, it did so without fireworks or dramatic confessions, just two tired adults sitting across from each other, sharing a meal that tasted better than it should have because it was layered with honesty, with stories of loss spoken carefully, of fears admitted softly, of hopes neither had allowed themselves to imagine until now. For Ethan, the challenge wasn't attraction or affection, it was guilt, the fear that allowing happiness meant betraying Lily's memory, that moving forward erased what came before, and for Claire the struggle lay in control, in letting herself be seen without titles or achievements, in trusting that vulnerability would not end in abandonment. Days turned into weeks, and what grew between them was not a whirlwind but a steady warmth, built through shared routines, through Claire helping Sophie with school projects, through Ethan learning that strength did not always mean doing everything alone, through quiet mornings where laughter replaced silence and evenings where exhaustion felt lighter when shared. Still, doubt crept in like a shadow at the edge of the room, whispers from coworkers, questions from friends, the unspoken worry that their worlds were too different, that a single father and a powerful executive could not truly align, and it all came to a head when Ethan faced the possibility of losing his job due to restructuring, a reminder that stability was always temporary and that love did not shield you from fear. In that moment of crisis, when old habits urged him to retreat, to protect others by disappearing, Claire chose differently, choosing presence over pride, partnership over distance, showing Ethan that love was not about rescue or dependency but about standing together when the ground shook. Sophie, wise beyond her years, sensed the change long before either adult acknowledged it, and in her quiet acceptance, in the way she reached for Claire's hand without hesitation, lay the truest confirmation that healing does not erase pain but grows around it, creating space for joy without denying loss. As seasons changed, so did Ethan, the lines of exhaustion softening, his laughter returning in unexpected moments, while Claire learned that success measured in shared breakfasts and bedtime stories carried a weight no promotion ever could, and together they built something that did not replace what was lost but honored it by choosing to live fully again. If this story is touching your heart even a little, if it reminds you that love can arrive disguised as a joke or a moment you almost dismissed, please take a second to like and share this video so it can reach someone who needs to hear that hope is not finished with them yet. Just before this story ends, we have one special request for you. Comment the word hope below if you believe that life can still surprise you when you least expect it, because Ethan's journey teaches us that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is let a door open when they thought it was safer to keep it closed. And in that simple choice, in that quiet yes to possibility, a broken life can begin to feel whole again, not because the past disappears, but because love finds a way to walk beside it into a future that finally feels like home.